It was the summer of 2018. My sister and I had set out on a long trip from Chicago to California. We were traveling in our father's old Caravan, a worn-out relic, with cabinet doors that rattled at every turn, and metal that rusted after the lightest rain. Still, it was more than just a vehicle. It carried the laughter of our childhood vacations, the weight of family memories. For us, it was a home on wheels. The first days of the journey were calm. Mornings started with the smell of coffee. Evenings ended at roadside motels or quiet rest areas. But the night we crossed into Nebraska, everything changed. The highway stretched endlessly between vast cornfields. As the sun went down, the sky bled red. Darkness swallowed the land. No headlights, no road signs pointing to towns, not even cell service, just silence. An overwhelming emptiness pressing down on us. At first, I tried to enjoy the solitude. Long roads often gave me peace. But that night, it felt different. It wasn't solitude anymore. It was the sense of being watched. As if unseen eyes were following us through the dark dot. My sister dozed in the passenger seat while my gaze drifted to the rearview mirror. That's when I saw them, two distant headlights weaving through the curves of the road. They were far away, but closing in, fast. And that was the moment the nightmare began. The lights drew closer, until they were right behind us. At first I thought it was just another traveler, but something wasn't right. The car kept surging forward, pulling back, then rushing up again, until it nearly touched our bumper. Over and over, my sister stirred awake. "What's going on?" she whispered. I pointed at the mirror. Behind us was an old rusted Ford truck. Its yellowed headlights barely lit the road. Through the windshield, a shadowy figure sat motionless. I couldn't make out a face. I pressed on the gas. The Caravan groaned but picked up speed. The truck did the same. I slowed down. Maybe it would pass. It didn't. It stayed locked onto us, copying every move. Like a predator keeping its distance, but never letting its prey escape. Minutes turned to half an hour. The tension inside the Caravan grew heavier with every mile. We searched desperately for a town sign, a gas station, any exit. Nothing. Only fields. Only the dark. The road felt endless. Finally, a glowing sign broke the monotony. Rest area ahead. My heart hammered. I swerved off the highway. The lot was empty. Vending machines dark. No staff in sight. Just harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Cold. Sterile. Yet I didn't feel safe. The truck had followed. It stopped at the entrance. The headlights went dark. It waited docked. Then, a heavy thud hit the side of the Caravan. The whole frame shuddered. My sister screamed. My hands shook as I crept toward the door. A shadow moved across the window. But when I looked, there was nothing outside. No footsteps. No figure. Just silence. A sudden groan rolled above us. Something heavy was moving across the roof. Metal creaked under deliberate footsteps. Slow, measured, intentional. My sister whispered, almost too faint to hear, "Someone's on top of us." I flicked on the headlights. The road ahead was empty, just asphalt and fields. But the weight above us pressed harder, like an invisible presence bearing down. Then, in an instant, the truck's headlights blazed back to life, blinding. And just as they did, the weight on the roof vanished. Gone, as if it had never been. Their instinct took over. I started the engine and slammed the gas. The Caravan's tires screeched as we lurched forward. In the mirror, the truck stayed where it was, frozen at the entrance, its lights glowing, watching. I drove for nearly an hour without stopping. I didn't dare look back. At last dawn broke and we rolled into a small town. I pulled into a gas station, hands still clenched so tight on the wheel that my knuckles had turned white dot inside. I asked an old man about the station back on the highway. His face turned grave. "That place has been closed for years," he said. "Travelers pass through at night and they tell strange stories." I swallowed hard. "What about the truck?" "An old rusted Ford." The man went quiet. Finally he muttered, "You're not the first to mention it, but no one's ever managed to read its license plate because it doesn't have one. It never did." I looked at my sister. Neither of us spoke, because deep down we both knew whatever followed us that night wasn't just a truck. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder, if the engine hadn't started when it did, would we have simply disappeared? It was the summer of 2016. 3 of us took our father's old camper out to the Utah desert. Just past the red arches and wind-carved stone, we pulled off on a quiet stretch of dirt and parked where the land opened up like an ocean sagebrush. Slick rock and a sky so full of stars it felt close enough to touch. We ate by lantern light. We kept the door open for the breeze. It was the kind of silence that makes you whisper without knowing why. Around 2 in the morning, the night changed. I woke to a sound I couldn't place soft at first, then heavier steps, not on the ground, on the roof. The three of us froze. No one spoke. Another step, a slow, deliberate creak of metal above our heads. Out here, miles from any road, there shouldn't have been anyone. No campers, no hikers, no one. We killed the lantern so our eyes could adjust. The camper seemed to shrink around us, every pop and tick of the cooling metal suddenly too loud. When the footsteps drifted toward the rear vent, something in me snapped, the kind of courage that only exists before your brain catches up. Grabbed a headlamp, my friend eased the door. We stepped out into the hard, powdery dust. The night air was cold enough to sting. At first, we didn't see anything. Then the beam of my lamp slid over the ground beside the back wheel, and we all stopped breathing. Tracks. Not animal, not tire. Prints, human-shaped, but wrong. Too long, too wide. As if someone had pressed a man's foot into the earth and then stretched it like warm taffy. Each step sat deep, 5 feet apart, circling the camper and disappearing into the darker wash below the mesa. We followed them with the lamp for maybe 10 yards, no more. The prints didn't fade, they just ended. Like the ground had decided to stop recording. Get inside, my friend said. No tough guy voice, no jokes, just flat fear. We slammed the door and shoved the deadbolt, as if that would matter. From the small window over the sink, I watched the desert. The headlamp lay on the counter, still glowing weakly, and outside the world was an X-ray of pale dust and black shadows. At first there was nothing, and then there was something, a figure maybe 20 feet away, standing just beyond the edge of the camper's cone of light. It didn't move, didn't sway, didn't breathe in a way we could see. A shape carved out of dark, no face, no hat, no color, only an outline that made sense to the eye and not to the mind. Turn on the headlights, someone whispered. We tried. The key turned. The dash lights flickered and died. We tried again. The dome light pulsed. The battery was fine hours ago. Now it wasn't. The generator wouldn't catch either, just a grinding cough and silence. On the roof, something scraped slow, like a palm pressed along the aluminum. The figure outside stayed perfectly still, as if it were listening. The night around us felt dense, thick, like air right before a thunderstorm. You could almost taste metal on your tongue. I don't know how long we stared. Time got strange. The scraping stopped. The figure tilted barely and every hair on my arms rose. And then, from somewhere in the wash, a sound floated up. Not an animal call, not the wind. A low, drawn-out note, almost a voice, almost a word, held for too long to be human breath. We braced for the next step on the roof. It didn't come. Instead, the camper gently rocked once, twice, as if something large had leaned on it, testing the weight, testing us. Please, my friend said. To no one we could see. The headlamp on the counter began to strobe, not flicker, strobing off at a steady, unnatural rhythm, like it had been told to do that. Each flash lit the window and the still figure outside, frozen in a sequence of black and white frames. Closer, closer, no footprints in between, just closer. I don't remember turning away. I just remember suddenly being on the floor, my back against the cabinet, my sister's nails digging crescents into my forearm. The strobing stopped. The camper stopped moving. The night went perfectly, mercilessly quiet. We waited for dawn. When the first light arrived, it felt like a release. Everything looked ordinary in that soft orange wash. No figure, no marks on the roof. We stepped out slowly, braced for anything. The sand was smooth as a sheet. The prints we'd seen were gone, every last one, like the desert had turned itself over in sleep. But we drove into town without speaking. The battery took a charge like nothing had ever been wrong. At a diner on Main Street, an old man poured coffee without being asked, and asked where we'd camped. We told him, out past the arches, near the flat rock and the dry wash. He set the pot down and stared at us for a long time. Don't camp alone in the desert, he said. Things still walk out there. They look like us. They're not. We didn't argue, we didn't laugh. We nodded, paid, and left. On the way out of town, I glanced in the side mirror. Habit, I guess. Empty road, bright sky, and for just a second, in the reflection of the rear window, I thought I saw not a face, exactly, more like the idea of a face, an outline our minds are wired to recognize. When I turned, there was nothing in the camper but sun and dust. But some nights when the house is quiet, I still hear it, the slow creak of a footfall on thin metal, traveling from front to back, patient as time. And I think about those prints in the dust, how they ended, not faded, ended like whatever made them didn't need them anymore. The summer of 2019 was supposed to be an adventure. My friend and I had taken my father's old camper and set out to explore the deep forests of Oregon. We wanted isolation roads that weren't marked on tourist maps, trails that led away from towns, and that's exactly what we found. The deeper we drove, the narrower the roads became. Towering evergreens pressed close on both sides, their branches knitting together overhead until the sky was little more than a strip of fading light. Hours went by without seeing another vehicle. No towns, no gas stations. Just the hum of the tires and the endless green walls on either side. At first it was peaceful. The air was damp and cool, carrying the sharp scent of pine and moss. We rolled down the windows and breathed it in, laughing at the idea that the forest had allowed us in, as though we were visitors in someone else's home. But the further we drove, the more I started to feel it, the silence. A silence so deep it seemed to swallow the sound of the engine itself. By the time the sun set, we had found a small clearing just off the road. We parked the camper, built a fire, and cooked a simple dinner. Flames crackled, sparks rose, and for a while, it felt safe. We told stories, joked, and watched the shadows flicker against the trees. But the forest was too quiet. No insects, no owls, just the occasional sigh of the wind. And even that seemed hushed, like the woods were holding their breath. It was around midnight when the first sound came. A scream, echoing through the trees, high-pitched, unearthly. Not animal, not human. Something in between. My friend and I froze, eyes locked on each other. Every instinct in me screamed to put the fire out. We stamped out the flames, retreated into the camper, and shut off the lights. Inside, the dark pressed in close, heavy and suffocating. Then it came again, the scream, louder, closer, and with it the unmistakable snap of branches breaking. Something was moving, something big. It circled just beyond our vision, testing the edges of the clearing. Minutes dragged on like hours. Then the sound changed. The crunch of footsteps, slow, heavy, directly outside. My heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else. I edged toward the small window, hesitated, and finally forced myself to look. That's when I saw it. A figure, standing among the trees, tall, thin, almost skeletal. Its skin, or what I thought was skin, was pale against the black of the forest. Too pale it didn't move, didn't sway with the wind. It just stood there, facing us, watching. I tried the lights. Nothing. Tried the generator. Dead. The switches clicked uselessly. The way they do when power is cut, when something stronger than you decides it's not your choice anymore. My friend whispered, "What is it?" But I had no answer. The footsteps came again, this time above us. The roof of the camper groaned under a slow, dragging weight, like a hand, or a body, being pulled across the thin metal. We didn't move, didn't breathe. The air grew thick, charged, the way it feels right before a thunderstorm breaks. Then, suddenly silence. Not fading silence, not the kind that slowly dies away. All at once, everything stopped. The forest, the air, even the night itself seemed to pause. We sat there in that frozen moment until exhaustion finally pulled us into restless, shallow sleep. When dawn broke, the forest looked harmless again. Sunlight streamed through the branches. Birds called out. The clearing was empty. No prints, no broken branches. No sign that anything had been there at all. Later that morning, in a small roadside town, we stopped at a diner. The waitress, an older woman with lines carved deep into her face, asked where we'd spent the night. When we told her, she went quiet, the color draining from her cheeks. "You shouldn't camp in those woods," she said finally. Her voice was low, steady. "People see things out there, pale things. They look human, but they're not." The summer of 2020 was a strange one. I had been driving across the southern states when I pulled off the highway into a small RV park in rural Texas. It wasn't on any map I had, just a faded wooden sign that read Shady Pines RV nailed to a leaning post. At first glance it looked ordinary enough. Half a dozen old campers lined up, a cracked office trailer, and what must have once been a playground. Its swings rusted and unmoving in the dry wind. There was something about the place though. By day, it seemed sleepy and quiet. But when the sun dipped behind the trees, the park changed. The air grew heavy. The shadows stretched longer than they should have. And at night, the whole place felt abandoned, as if the people who lived there had simply ceased to exist. The first night I woke to the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling my camper. The kind of sound that doesn't mistake itself for raccoons or stray dogs. Human. I held my breath, straining to hear, but the moment I slid the curtain back, There was nothing, just the faint glow of the street lamp flickering over the gravel. And yet, the footsteps had been real. I was sure of it. The second night was worse. A camper 2 lots down suddenly lit up, its windows glowing a sickly yellow. I thought maybe someone new had pulled in, but when I stepped outside, the place was silent. No shadows moved inside. No voices, just a trailer glowing against the dark, as if the lights had switched on by themselves. I waited, watched, but by dawn, the lights went out, and when I walked past, the camper was empty, dust coating the steps. A broken lock hanging loose. By the third night, sleep had become impossible. Every creak of the metal frame, every brush of wind felt like someone outside, waiting. That night, I woke again, this time not to footsteps, but to a face, pressed against the glass of my window, white, expressionless, dead eyes staring in. I jerked the curtain open in a panic, and it was gone, vanished into the dark as if it had never been there at all. The next morning, I stormed into the office trailer, demanding answers from the manager, a heavy-set man with grey stubble, who barely looked up from his newspaper. "The camper with the yellow lights," I said. "Who's staying there?" He gave me a long, almost pitying look. "Nobody," he said flatly. "That lot's been empty for years. I should have left." Then, every instinct told me to get in my truck and drive. But something rooted me there, a mix of dread and curiosity. I need to know if what I'd seen was real or if exhaustion was twisting my mind. Over the next few days, the park grew emptier. Campers that had been occupied when I arrived now sat with doors ajar, blinds swaying in the hot wind. People I'd glimpsed before, an old couple with lawn chairs, a young man washing his RV, simply weren't there anymore. No goodbyes, no engines starting, just gone. And then came the final night. The air was so still it felt suffocating. I shut off the lights early, telling myself I would ignore whatever sounds came. But sometime after midnight, I felt it shift. The temperature dropped, the air pressing down like a weight. Then came the silence. Not the quiet of night, but a silence so deep it rang in my ears. I forced myself to peek through the blinds, and I froze. They were there, figures, dozens of them, standing in a wide circle around my camper, not moving, not speaking, just watching, their shapes blurred by the weak light, their faces pale, indistinct. My heart pounded so loud I thought they'd hear it. I wanted to scream, to start the engine, to do something, but my body wouldn't move. I sat that way for what felt like hours, trapped inside, surrounded by things that shouldn't exist. And then, just as suddenly as they'd appeared, they were gone. The air lightened, the silence lifted, and I collapsed into a restless sleep. When I opened the door at dawn, the park was empty. Completely empty. Every trailer gone. The office, the playground, even the flickering lamppost, all of it. In its place was nothing but a flat stretch of gravel and weeds, as though the RV park had never existed at all. To this day, I can't explain what happened there. Sometimes I wonder if I dreamed the whole thing, if I fell asleep on the road, and imagined it all. But then I remember the sound of those footsteps, the face at the glass, the circle of figures in the night, and I know, whatever that place was, I didn't imagine it.